How do you want your life to be different this year than it was last year? How do you want your life to be different when you graduate than it is today? Do you want to be happier, richer, smarter? Do you want a stable relationship, a good job? What are you doing here, now, to build that future? If you were raised in the United States, you would have been raised with the worldview that says that by working hard and making the right choices, you can shape your own future. You've probably been raised to feel that you have a right to as good as, if not better, future than your parents had. Those of you who were not born in the U.S. may not have this worldview, but you recognize it. You've seen it in our movies, our TV shows, read it in our books, and it may well be one of the reasons you came here to study in the U.S. But there are other ways of looking at the world. Within the social sciences, we have a strong institutionalist tradition that contradicts this U.S. worldview. This perspective emphasizes the fact that you have been produced by particular social institutions, by families, by schools, by hospitals, by peer networks, by media, that have already largely shaped your habits and your tastes and your values. You operate within a complex set of institutional regulations, government regulations, laws, banking systems, labor markets, all of which are shaped by shifts in national and international economic systems, and all of which constrain your agency at every level, often in ways you're barely capable of recognizing because you take it for granted. And here's an important thing you need to know. They are absolutely right. The U.S. worldview that you can act as an individual largely unconstrained by the wider world is naive. The U.S. is not a fair system. It's not like a Monopoly game where everyone starts with the same amount of money. In real life, some people start with Boardwalk and Park Place and a ton of cash, and others start with nothing. It's not a poker game in which everyone gets a random hand. The deck is stacked. It's stacked by the social positions into which people are born. By social positions, I mean things like class, the categorization of humans based on their economic positions in a given society. Ethnicity, the categorization of people based on culturally ascribed notions of heritage, language, or culture. Gender, the categorization of people based on culturally constructed ideas about being male, female, or something between. Or race, the categorization of people based on superficial biological traits such as skin color or hair characteristics. But here's the other thing you need to know. The institutionalist perspective is equally naive. Individuals do have agency. They are able to act, sometimes with surprising autonomy and in contradiction to social norms, in spite of institutional constraints. A central problem of anthropological theory is how to relate structure, the system of institutional constraints that organizes society, with agency, the human capacity to act in spite of that structure. We are all culturally and socially produced persons with a certain amount of agency. And the question is, what can you do with that agency to achieve those goals you claim to have? People act according to values, but they don't always know what those values are. We anthropologists learn very early that the worst way to find out values is to ask somebody. They'll tell you what people in their community are supposed to value, not what they value. To learn that, you have to observe what they say to one another in everyday life, and you have to observe how they act. College is a unique place to rebuild your habits, to establish new personal and professional practices. How do you want your life to be different after you graduate? You might want to start laying the foundation now. In one sense, the deck is stacked in your favor. Less than 2% of the people in the world graduate from college. Just by being enrolled in this course, you are a member of a global elite. But there's a lot of competition out there among the global elite. Are you getting the education you need? You take courses at Miami in part because it's one of the original public Ivies, offering a private school education at a public school price. Are you getting that education? Check the websites. At Brown, where I got my PhD, the professor I was a TA for assigned 6 books for a 100-level class in anthropology similar to this one. This class has only a fraction of that reading load. If I assigned 6 books, would you read them? Or would you submit an evaluation for the course that says there was way too much reading for a 100-level class? To make it worse, many of you are taking this course not out of interest in the subject, but because the university makes you take a bunch of classes outside your major. Why do we do that? Well, there are two kinds of colleges. There are those that create specialists and those that create generalists. A liberal arts education is supposed to teach you how to learn, how to make learning a lifelong practice, a habitual action. Now, there are good reasons for choosing to be ignorant. Education is expensive, in terms of both time and money, so it seems reasonable to ask what return you'll get on your investment. Others worry that an education will brainwash you into one political ideology or another, making you either a habitual conformist or a dangerous nonconformist who wants to criticize and change everything. Others are like the student who came to my office to drop a course in international studies because the issues discussed, like global poverty, international terrorism, and political struggle, depressed her. I just don't want to know about those things, she said. But there's also a continuum of reasons to be educated. The explanation on the left is probably held by a lot of your professors. Many become educators because somewhere along the line education became one of our core values. You don't often hear about the need for education to be a responsible member of a democratic society these days, but that's the value Horace Mann and others used in the 1850s to sell the American people on the idea of free public education. And of course, for many, a liberal arts education is supposed to prepare them for life in a global workforce. So here's the most important thing you need to know about taking an anthropology course at a liberal arts institution like Miami. It isn't about learning anthropology. It isn't essential 5 years from now if you remember much about forms of social organization, the anthropological perspective, or the 3 forms of reciprocity. The smartest among you will, but that's not the crucial point. If you think that engaging in the varied coursework that we make you take as part of your liberal arts education is about the content of the classes, you're probably wasting your time. Some of you will become captivated by anthropology and pursue it as a major or minor, a thematic sequence. For the rest, this class is practice. But practice for what? When you leave this university with a diploma, your employer likely won't care much what your GPA was, and usually not even what your major was. What they want to know is that you can read or otherwise gather unfamiliar information, understand it, integrate it with what you already know, critically evaluate it, and come to tentative conclusions about it, then clearly explain those conclusions orally and in writing, including increasingly digital writing. Second, they think you will have learned how to learn, so they can train you. Third, they believe you are developing transferable skills. These are skills you develop in one context, like a classroom or a lab, or your extracurricular activities, but which are transferable to other very different work environments. They include people skills, cognitive skills, practical skills, and adaptive skills. To help you get a better understanding of how transferable skills work, I have a little exercise for you.